Hi, this is Martin Fong with CloudCasa Software, and this demo is going to be on cluster BMR, and it's actually a follow-up to the previous video on cross-cluster/cross-account restore that I did a few weeks ago, which you should check out on our YouTube channel if you haven't already done so using the links provided below. But in the previous video, we were restoring our application to a target standby cluster, which was previously provisioned. But CloudCasa can also create a cluster for you on the fly, something that we call cluster BMR. So restoring your application namespace can also create a cluster for you, thereby eliminating the need to have a cluster pre-provisioned with the CloudCasa agent installed, or even needing to have a standby cluster sitting around doing nothing and wasting resources. So at the time of this recording, we can only do a cluster BMR to Amazon EKS. So just something to keep in mind, but remember, you still have the option of performing cross-cluster, cross-cloud restores to pre-configured Kubernetes clusters if you want to have that mobility of moving your application around. Since we've covered the topic of creating a backup and restore job in the previous video, I'm just going to highlight the differences for a cluster BMR. To do a cluster BMR, you're going to need to define a restore job just as you did with the cross-cluster restore, but this time you're going to select Create EKS Cluster when selecting the destination. Now I can rename my namespaces using my initials as the prefix and date as a suffix, as we had done previously, and also remap my CSI storage classes to EBS storage classes during the restore. The Amazon EKS cluster that gets created by default will deploy an EBS storage class called GP2. So you'll need to manually type that in here as well. When you click Next, this is going to open up a separate panel allowing you to specify parameters for creating your EKS cluster. So we'll give our cluster a name. Call it cluster BMR with today's date, and we'll specify the cloud account that we had scanned in previously. We'll need to specify the AWS user, and I can use my own here, and select the region, which we will choose US East 1. For the roles, we'll need to specify a cluster role and a node role that gives AWS the permissions it needs to create and manage the EKS clusters as your user. Just note that these roles are different than the role created when you registered the cloud account, so you're not going to be able to use that role. In this case, I have two roles created, which I will select. So one is the EKS cluster role, and the other is the EKS node role. And I also have the ability to select a virtual private cloud that I want to associate my cluster with, but I'll go ahead and leave these as default for now. Once I click Save, it'll kick off the job and I can open up the activity log from the dashboard. So here you can see it creating a new EKS cluster into my Amazon Web Services, and I can check out the status of my clusters through the EKS dashboard. So if I jump to this EKS tab here, you can see that my cluster is now being created and it is in a creating state. I'm just going to pause the video here since it's going to take some time to provision the cluster, and we'll come back once the restore is complete. Coming back from the break, we see that our restore is completed, and it took about 10 or let's say 11 minutes to create the cluster. And once created, it was able to restore the node group configuration as well as make the cluster accessible to my AWS user that we set in the restore job definition. And finally, restore the application namespace and persistent volumes. Now that the restore is successful, we'll check out our EKS dashboard and do a refresh here. And we see that my cluster is now active. I'll go ahead and copy that cluster name so I can add it to my queue-config later. And if I jump back to my CloudCasa console under the Protection tab, you'll notice that a CloudCasa agent was also automatically installed into the cluster and it was automatically registered into my CloudCasa account, and here you can see it showing up as active. So now I can add the cluster into my kubeconfig. And from here, I'll check the nodes and persistent volumes. So those are the two nodes that were created as a result of bringing up my cluster, along with the pods and namespace using my customized naming convention. And finally, my persistent volume claims bound to the EBS storage class GP2 on my Amazon EKS cluster. So in conclusion, Cluster BMR allows you to restore your Kubernetes applications entirely from scratch to an Amazon EKS cluster that gets automatically provisioned for you from CloudCasa. So combined with cross-cluster and cross-cloud restore functionality, you're able to move applications between on-prem and off-prem infrastructure very easily just by defining a restore job within CloudCasa. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do have any questions or are interested in signing up for your free CloudCasa account, visit our website at cloudcasa.io. You can even contact me directly using the email link in the description provided below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.